Breath of the Wild is a game that's heart is delved deep into exploration of its open world. I would argue that this is the best open world game to date, and you wouldn't be able to tell me why. Let's start with some of the more obvious reasons the game is successful. The visuals in this game are fantastic. The game is full of perfectly screenshotable views. The color is stunning, especially for a game that runs on the dinky piece of hardware that is the Nintendo Switch. The paraglider is the perfect mechanic for the game, allowing you to view landscapes while getting the benefit of moving faster across this large world. The climbing in Breath of the Wild works perfectly into the game. You're able to traverse an open world in a way that has never been seen in a video game before. Take a look at Assassin's Creed 2, where you have to hop from ledges, and while you're not limited by stamina, you are limited in freedom in a way that isn't true in Zelda. In Skyrim, you have to force your way up mountains and jump in mechanics that can't even be called climbing. And oftentimes people refer to this sort of thing in other games as Skyriming. It's notorious for it. Another major contributor to the game's success is the music. It blends perfectly with the atmosphere of the game and complements the world you're shown, and it gives the world life in a way only music can do. One moment you're peacefully exploring the riverside stable, and the next you're being chased through the countryside by a giant laser robot that wants to blow you up. And the music for these changes so beautifully. Now some would say, it's not as good as the other Zelda games, with this great big theme that allows you to feel the adventure. But while there is validity to that train of thought, it misses the point. Breath of the Wild is about exploration and taking in a world, not about a big adventure like the other Zelda games are. Music and visuals in Breath of the Wild are obviously stunning, but what about how it compares to other games in this series, and even other open world games in general? Now, this is more complex than the music and visuals that can easily be praised. Zelda has taken some criticism from veering away from the design choices of other Zelda games, most notably the dungeons, where in Breath of the Wild it's all puzzle themed, especially the giant divine beasts, compared to the other Zelda's more linear dungeon to dungeon experience. And I think the important thing to take away from here is Zelda breaks away from the formula, not just the formula of other Zelda games, other than the game industry as a whole. For example, you have an Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty game coming out every year, putting strain on the workers, and the quality of the game suffers because of this. Breath of the Wild gave people a breath of fresh air, and switched things up. It took time to revolutionize the game's mechanics, and show us to experience similar things in different ways. The most notable example of this is remote bombs. Now, bombs have shown up in every Zelda game, where you place them down or throw them and they explode, oftentimes doing damage to groups of enemies and revealing paths. Breath of the Wild does a similar thing, but instead of having bombs be a collectible you find throughout the world, you shove your iPad into this tablet and it allows you to throw these little bombs. Instead of being a collectible, they're on a cooldown where you can summon and throw them. It is used oftentimes in puzzles. This is very different from other Zelda games, but it's similar enough to the trope to show that it's changing things for the good. The game's physics engine is amazing. I can't say anything bad about it. It's so complex that new things are being discovered about it every day. It's quirky, and it's fun, and has amazing game feel. These are all very important, especially the game feel. Zelda's game feel is amazing. From one thing to the next, it constantly delivers on having this feel good and this feel good, from fighting to paragliding. The physics engine allows you to interact with the world in new ways, and is just overall fun, and gives the game identity. The combat in Zelda is important as well. It changes things from other Zelda games, like the Z targeting system, which is set up where you hold down a button to choose what enemy you're going to target and allow for better one-on-one battles with them. This not only feels good, but mixed with flurry rushes and parries allows for a high skill gap that you don't need to always engage with, giving players who aren't as good at the game an opportunity to play the way they want for higher skilled players to engage with the challenge. The setting is important in any game, and Breath of the Wild is no different. From the cold of the Hebrew Mountains to the warm deserts of the Gerudo. Its setting changes. Important to analyze the fact that the setting in Breath of the Wild changes and is never the same. For example, in one part of the map, you're dealing with a large rainy area, or one part there's electrical enemies, and another part there's ice enemies. It's different mechanics for you to engage in, and it keeps things fresh. While I don't think this is the backbone of the game, it leans into the combat variety and shows that there's always something to explore and discover. Exploration is one of the most important things in Breath of the Wild. Without it, the game would not be the masterpiece that I think it is. It's pretty obvious that I've played a lot of Zelda, and its exploration plays into this a lot. Now, I went about 200 hours before I discovered the whole open world, finished the story, and started to feel like I had truly gotten into the end game. I've played another 65 hours since I hit this point, and here's why. Even though I've explored the majority of the map and seen all the big things there are to see, that doesn't mean that I've seen everything. As I play, I discover something new every time. A new puzzle, a new secret, a new shrine. It took me 265 hours before I did every shrine. That's amazing. They haven't milked the game dry, and yet I still go back to it for fun. I've even replayed the game in Master Mode and otherwise, for just the fun of it. The game is that fun to play. I love the storytelling in Breath of the Wild. While the story it tells is a cookie-cutter Zelda story, it does its storytelling and world building amazingly. Doing memories and rediscovering what happened before the calamity is amazing. It's an interesting way to tell the story, and it shows what Link's fighting for, and what you're fighting for as well, giving you a reason to kill Ganon. The memories are excellent. The plethora of journals and hidden things allows for world building and more information and storytelling for people who do like the story and want to find out more about it, like me. The last little bit of praise I want to divvy out to Breath of the Wild is in its difficulty curve. I will touch on this more, but I love the way it handles the open world difficulty. For those of you who don't know, Breath of the Wild has what many people call a hidden XP system. As you go through the world, do quests, complete divine beasts, kill enemies, it tallies up a sort of point system, and as those points increase, the weapons you find get better, and the enemies you fight get harder. For example, this sword will be this sword by the end of the game, and this bokoblin will be this bokoblin by the end of the game. Now, this is in contrast to games like Skyrim, where the difficulty curve in that is some areas are harder than others, and you just have to happen upon the easier areas and not the harder ones, and grind up XP to go to the harder ones. While there are benefits to this, Breath of the Wild fits the large open world a tad bit better. It keeps harder areas accessible when you're less powerful, and easier areas harder as you get more powerful. It also means that you're rewarded for the challenges you go through, like rushing into a vampire when replaying Skyrim, thinking you're going to be able to take it on, even though you can't, without grinding out XP, or a skilled enough player in Breath of the Wild can take on the whole world. Now, as much as I love the difficulty curve, the game is too easy, and while Master Mode does alleviate this, having to pay for what the game truly should feel like is kinda scummy of Nintendo. While the base game isn't bad, Master Mode fixes difficulty. For those who don't know, Master Mode makes the game harder in many ways, where this Bokoblin, instead of being this Bokoblin at the start, is this Bokoblin at the start, and this Bokoblin by the end. Now to go into some real criticisms of the game. It needs more dungeons like Hyrule Castle. While Hyrule Castle is amazing, and we need more of that, it does suffer from issues like Revali's Gale being a cheap cop-out for it, and being a little shorter. Breath of the Wild with more of these would feel amazing, where you're exploring and have to take on monumental challenges at times. A controversial topic in Breath of the Wild is weapon durability. People were not a fan of this when the game launched, and people still aren't really fans of it. While I do think the idea is good, and they're so close to implementing it correctly, things feel a little too random and out of your control, while you can't regain the weapons you love oftentimes, and don't know how or where they are. Now, I've talked about things I love and things I hate about this game. I will go back and play more of this game, because I love it, and in some ways, it is a masterpiece. I'm super excited for the second Breath of the Wild game, and will be dumping time into Hyrule Warriors as I wait. This is unedited or uncut RedDerby. Thank you for watching this video. It took a long time to make, and I just about finished editing. Thank you to Croton or whoever. Your video about the hidden XP system in the game. It inspired me to talk about the game, but was also like I really liked learning about the game. So thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.